Sometimes I hear seed stage companies talking about building a board. That makes no sense. These things are infants, um, and infants don't need that kind of formality. You're trying to really just get the basics going.
Welcome to this week's episode of Zero to a Million, brought to you by Unstack. I'm your host, Zach Rego, and today I'm joined by George Kassabgi, entrepreneur, developer, board member, angel investor, software technology executive, two-time CEO, and founder. It's a long list of titles, George. We're gonna talk a lot today about building a board, how to manage a board. Last, 6 or so episodes have been about what investors are looking for, how to pitch them, and now I think it's really important that we talk about what happens once they're on board. And George has a ton of experience in this space. So George, thank you so much for joining me today.
Happy to be here, Zach. It's important part of the startup CEO's role.
It is, and I was I mentioned to you right before this, we have our board meeting today. So this is great timing. I'm going to segue right from this to all the great stuff I learned from you and try to leverage it. Before we dive into the topic, would love to learn a little bit more about your background. Obviously, there's a laundry list of things you've done throughout your career. A lot of it in the tech space. A lot of your investments have had successful exits. So would love for you to talk a little bit about your experience up to this point.
Yeah, I've been an angel investor for a decade or so, depending on how you count. And Unstack is one of my more recent investments, and I led the seed round at Insurify, where Unstack's founder and CTO was also the head of product. So I love getting involved very, very early. The garage stage, when it's quote unquote two guys and a dog. I put that in quotes because a lot of times it's women founders, as is the case with Insurify. But I love that early stage, that infancy stage. But basically, my background is software technology, infrastructure, 30 years in the business. Very large companies like BEA Systems, which was one of the leaders in the dot-com bubble and beyond. I was fortunate enough to be the first CEO of Bit9, which went public as Carbon Black and was acquired by VMware. I've been on more boards than I can count, and really have learned from some tremendous leaders and CEOs about board mechanics and how to make the most of a board. Can be something that's a cross that you carry, or at times it can be something that has tremendous value to the business. So I really over time have paid attention to how some of the best in the business really leverage that. So basically, background is in software tech. My favorite things are machine learning. I've written extensively about machine learning, especially where it intersects language. One of my early investments was a tech analytics company in Kendall Square. And then application frameworks. What frameworks can we use to build applications, especially business applications? I was on the board of a company called Mendix that was a leader in this space. And I'm a huge fan of Google Flutter, which I think is really the winning application framework right now in terms of developer mindshare. So software, especially business applications and infrastructure.
Awesome. So you mentioned this, right? You've seen a lot of executives lead a board successfully. I'm sure you've seen a lot of, poorly led, board meetings or board management. When do you think it's a good time to establish a board, and when should you be, I don't want to say putting it off, but just trying to stay focused on the task at hand?
Right. You definitely should not try to build a board until institutional investors are in the picture post seed round. In fact, they will require it, like in a Series A. When institutional investors get involved with a meaningful amount of money to them, they will require, and oftentimes it's a syndicate that comes in, they will require corporate bylaws and a board establishment, to oversee their investment. I mean, if you and I put $10 million into something, we would want some kind of a formal, legally bound entity to oversee the money, right? So it makes complete sense. A lot of times entrepreneurs look at this as a burden or some kind of a problem. but honestly, it makes sense. And so, but I wouldn't establish a board before that. Sometimes I hear seed stage companies talking about building a board. That makes no sense. It's these things are infants, and infants don't need that kind of formality. You're trying to really just get the basics going. And a board really is not a thing that's going to add value at that stage. So typically, Series A is when it gets created. But there's a lot of mistakes made at that stage with entrepreneurs that are just eager to get any money involved by institutional investors. So you want to kind of pump the brakes and really take a giant step back, and make sure that the people that are going to be around the table are, to the best of your ability, are going to be business partners. That's very hard to do in the excitement and all the commotion. You want to make sure that as much as you possibly can, each board seat is a business partner, or someone you think is going to be a value add business partner. Otherwise, they shouldn't be on the board, or they should be an observer.
And let's dig into that a little bit. So the composition of a board of directors, you mentioned, right? You're gonna potentially raise some money. You're gonna raise some money at some point. They're gonna ask and take a seat. You're hopefully raising from investors that you want to be a part of that journey with you, right? There's a lot of vetting that goes into that process. But what's that typical composition, and where should you start looking for, the folks that are going to round that out and really make it something that's super valuable for you as a founder?
Yeah, and this is all very difficult. It's easy to say and talk about, but it's difficult to do. I've been there. It's challenging, especially in the midst of everything else going on with a typical, let's say, Series A. You mentioned, and I've written about the importance of bringing business partners in as investors. You can never fire an investor. You can fire an employee that you hired. You can even part ways with the founder, but you can never really part ways with an investor. So you have to be extra careful to make sure the not the firm, but the actual partner from the firm that's doing the investment is someone you believe can be a long-term business partner. 4 words. It's very difficult, right? What makes you or I a good long-term business partner? And so we could have a separate session on that. But so that partner is clearly going to be a board member. You've chosen them to be an investor, which is a huge bar. They've chosen you to be a founder they're going to invest in, which is also a high bar. So now he or she is going to be a board member. So oftentimes these institutional investments, like a Series A, will be through a syndicate. So that second partner that's brought in as a syndicate, who hopefully you've vetted as well, is going to be the second director seat representing preferred. And technically that's a legal term. They're representing preferred, which again we can get into those details here or in a different section. So then you want 2 commensurate seats representing common. Again, the bylaws are very specific about this, the corporate bylaws that are established as part of that institutional round. Hint, get your law firm involved and going on this stuff early. And so the founders are typically 2 founders. If there's only 1 founder, then a founder and somebody else in the company that is trusted, by the founder or founders. So 2 and 2 would be a good starting point. Keep it simple. And again, you have to manage these things, even if they're small and simply constructed. You still have to manage them right. Another variant would be 2 and 2 and an independent. That's an industry expert or someone that clearly can add a tremendous amount of value. Again, long term. Not somebody that's just eye candy, that's going to get involved for a couple of months, but someone long term that really understands what it means to add value in that way for years. I was an independent board member at Mendex, which is a Dutch company. I went to Holland, 24 times, and I was involved for 7.5 years. So these are long-term, and also you're legally bound. You're legally responsible, and so this isn't something to be done haphazardly. So that's the composition: 2 + 2 or 2 + 2 + 1. Certainly avoid anything bigger than that early on, even through Series C or D. Keep it simple.
So the one, it sounds like you have the most flexibility to go and find subject matter expert, someone that you feel is either filling a gap on the board or within the organization potentially. How have you seen earlier stage companies fill that seat that they really have a lot of control over, picking who can fill it?
Well, usually the preferred investors need to approve the independent. Let's be clear about that. It can't just be my uncle. But how they go about it again is somebody that they really respect, that's got industry knowledge, that's got ecosystem contacts, that can introduce the team to important accounts, for example, or important partners. As long as it's somebody that you have great chemistry with, that you think would be a great value add partner and can have a long-term view, then you're in good shape. But again, it may not be necessary early on. You could just do 2 + 2 until you get a little bit further along. It can also be somebody that can mentor the founder CEO, through certain periods of growth. I certainly have been in that role, and that's a great way of looking at it as well.
So, I think we can dig into that a bit more too, because, early stage founders need a lot of guidance and help. Early stage executives in all matters need a lot of, help. I've got mentors that I reach out to. I reached out to one earlier this week, and just had a 30-minute call on like, here's what the hell's going on in my brain. Is that person the same sometimes, or do you advise founders to look for mentors outside of and away from the board to really almost separate those two mentors or groups?
Running a early stage startup for the first time is a period in which you really should be able to lean on a couple of mentors that you have and trust. They absolutely don't need to be board members. They probably will not be. All I'm saying is that the independent could lend a hand, could be a trusted entity that the founder CEO goes to at times, but not necessarily. I think it's very important to have trusted mentors. They certainly don't need to be on the board. You could have a trusted mentor that actually knows nothing about your sector. That's okay. They know how you think, and they can offer you guidance, maybe in terms of general management. So no, I wouldn't conflate the two.
Okay. And then, I think something that becomes, you mentioned this earlier, right? It can feel like a burden, having a board, and it shouldn't be. I think there's two ways it can go. It can feel like a burden, and you're meeting often, and you're prepping, and you're spending all this time on just knowledge transfer or data transfer, as opposed to feeling like something that's a support group or helping you navigate, the business. How often do you recommend boards meet, and where does the communication, like what's that level of communication that you need with your board to keep them engaged so that the meetings are really effective when you're meeting?
Yeah, this is very important and very rarely done well. And where and when I've seen it done well, it's astonishing how much more productive and valuable it is. So again, what I'm about to say is difficult to establish, but it pays dividends time and time again, long term. So in terms of how often to meet, if you've got a board that's really business partners and adding value, in a startup, I would meet every month, not every quarter. That's not often enough. But I would keep it short, 90 minutes to 2 hours max. You're only going to be able to keep it short if you run these meetings productively. So we'll get to that in a minute. You can also skip August and December. So 10 meetings a year should be vibrant, a time of updating everyone around the table, and picking a topic to have a discussion around. Again, if it's managed correctly. Unfortunately, a lot of times what I see is half-day meetings every month, which is totally ridiculous, way too much time. As things progress through stages of growth, you can certainly switch, and many companies switch to quarterly, maybe 3 or 4 hour meetings once every 3 months. That's perfectly reasonable. That makes complete sense, especially with the larger board. Say you have a board of 7 plus 5 observers, you certainly don't want to get that circus together every month. So again, that is all fine and good, but the meetings have to be run productively. And one of the greatest tips I would offer here is look at these meetings as trying to accomplish 2 things only. One is to update the investors. I mean, they need to be updated on the business, right? They need to know what's going on. You can't just do that over email. And two is to engage them in something that's important and timely in that meeting. So create the packet, but ask them to read it. Read the packet. Send it to them 2 or 3 days beforehand, but they need to read it. You are not reading it to them. This is what I see happening 90% of the time, is we get together as a board and you're going to read packets of information to me. That's crazy. Because the first agenda item of being updated, I should be able to get just by reading the packet and asking a few questions. So at the beginning of the board meeting, there's an agenda item, sort of bringing people up to date at a high level, but then people get to ask questions on what was in the packet. That may take 15, 20, 25 minutes, then everybody's updated, right? Then you have some kind of board business, and then there's a strategic discussion on something in particular. Maybe it's an executive hire. Maybe it's an M&A shot across the bow. Maybe it's some troublesome compliance issue, whatever. And so there's your 90 minutes, right? Very easily. But in order to achieve this, you have to set that precedent, you have to hold them to it, and you have to, ask that they read the materials, and they can ask questions over email. Like, what was slide 3.5? That shouldn't take up time in a board meeting with everybody around. And the other thing that I always advise, and is a thing really, never break this rule. No one should ever be surprised in a board meeting, ever. I should never come to a board meeting and be shocked by anything. So if there's something that is surprising in the update, just update people beforehand. If it's really bad, then call each board member. Remember, if it's 2 + 2, there's only 2 people you have to call. So never surprise anybody in the board meeting, not in a big way, and certainly not in a bad way, right, ever. So they should never be that exciting. You should come in pretty much knowing what's going on, and as a board member, come into the board meeting thinking, okay, I'm going to add value here because the strategic discussion is this, and I'm going to try to make some introductions. I'm going to try to insert some ideas here. So that's the makings of a very productive board meeting. Most of the times, this is not what happens, and this is a lot more work than just haphazardly creating slides and reading them to the directors, which is not how you manage a group of people overseeing your business.
Yeah, so you mentioned something before as kind of a hack, and I loved it, and I think we try to implement it, especially on the executive level, but maybe not so much on the board level. Is send the presentation beforehand and ask them to update it. So don't just ask them to review it. Like, you want that feedback, and you mentioned either an email back or commenting, and we've had a couple board members that are tagging me in comments. Why is this? What's going on here? What about this? And that's amazing, right? Like, it gets my gears turning on, okay, what do I need to prepare more or clarify better? And then when we get to the meeting, we are executing or coming up with a plan to execute, which is so powerful. So any other hacks that you feel like are just little things? I mean, you mentioned that in passing, and I'm like, wow, yeah, those are the most effective meetings, but would love to dig into some other hacks that you've got that just allow people to prepare appropriately on both sides.
A hack that can serve a startup CEO very, very well and is extremely valuable is there's updates on the business in marketing, sales, and product. Have your leaders give those updates, not you as the CEO. No one wants to come to a board meeting for 3 hours and just hear the CEO talking. And most directors want to see, what is the leadership like? How are these people thinking? Can I ask this person a question and get more, So that takes the CEO out of driving the entire meeting and talking the entire time. So that's one. I wouldn't call that a hack. That's actually a very, very good practice. A hack that can save you money and makes a ton of sense, and I don't see often enough, is your corporate counsel, your lawyer, a company lawyer. He or she absolutely must be in these board meetings, and they should do it pro bono, because it's the only way they can be updated on the business. And how can you represent a business legally if you're not updated on the business? So the top firms, and I've always, in my corporate counsel, they're expected to come to these meetings or dial in. They don't have to be there in person. They take minutes, which is a requirement in most corporate settings of these meetings. as part of the formality, but they're not charging you for the time. It makes no sense. Why would you charge me for the time in order to be updated on the business so you can represent me? So that's a hack that will save you money. And if the corporate counsel isn't up to that, they don't think that's a good idea, find a new one. They have to be invested in this business, right? And that's a small thing to ask. 90 minutes every month. And always ask. Startup founders are reluctant to ask investors to take to-do items. They're just reluctant to put things on investors' plate. I had an investor from Kleiner Perkins in one of my startups come to me and say, I'm going to give you some feedback. You never give me anything to do. And that really shocked me. He expected me to give directors like, for example, I want to be introduced to these 5 companies. Go work on that, right? Or I want to know what's going on behind the scenes in this potential acquirer or partner. Go tap into your ecosystem and do some research. So look at these folks and say, what can I give them to do between this board meeting and the next? Change the dynamic so it's not just, well, we're going to come once a month and beat you up, to, we're gonna come and they've asked me to add value, so I'm going to come with this prepared. For example, as an independent, I'd be asked, we're struggling with a technical decision. Can you meet with our CTO and have some working sessions before the next meeting, and then he'll report back? So things like that, not really hacks, but they're good practices. And I said before, don't surprise people in these meetings. That's never going to work. So those are a few hacks or best practices.
So there's one that I feel like I've done with one of our board members I used to work for directly, Ralph, and I kind of know his network just from working with him for so long. Like, I kind of know who he knows. With new board members and from an executive, like I don't know, Stu and Kunal who have recently joined us as well. Like, I didn't vet them out by any means. I wasn't really involved in helping pick the investor. How do you recommend executives get to know the board members to leverage that? Because from a sales and marketing perspective, I know Ralph's network. I can tap that and talk to him and be really in tune with what I can leverage him for. Stu and Kunal, not so much. I obviously am getting to know them, but how do you recommend executives that are not necessarily the co-founder go and tap the board for different to-dos and help sessions?
The best way to get to know somebody in this context is to do some planning work with them. So let's have some working sessions to plan XYZ that may be in their wheelhouse. Maybe in your case it's marketing. There's got to be board members that have marketing expertise. In fact, there should be board members and investors who can bring marketing experts in the SaaS space, for example, or in the MarTech space, in your case, forward. Say to them, for example, do you have other portfolio companies that have really world-class marketing executives that maybe we could have a working session on with regards to this topic? And then that's a fair amount of work, but it's actually exactly the right thing to do. And so in that kind of a planning or working session, you can get to know these people better and form an actual working relationship with them. Now, a lot of startup executives, especially first time, they think this is crazy. Why would I engage with the investors? But you're actually future fundable founders, right? So this is exactly what you should do, is tap into that value proposition over time and get to know these people, because they may be the ones funding your startup later on. Work with me on product tech. I may invest, was the case with Steve. I certainly invested in his next company because I was very impressed with him as a technologist and a product person. So it's exactly the thing to do, and yet it's the least common thing I've seen. It's usually, the CEO has built a wall around the board. We can't touch them. It's fine for the CEO to be involved in these planning meetings, but really the leadership, individual leaders should drive this. But again, it's often not how they think. They should be thinking as future founders around potential investors and folks within the investment ecosystem.
Okay. And a question that's off a little bit, but I've actually joined a couple advisory boards, right, where I'm just coming in as an SME. I partner with the marketing and sales leaders. We meet once a quarter and just really over coffee or a beer and catch up. And I talk about what I'm doing, give them some ideas. They go and do it. They have success, or I provide intros. Uh, when do you recommend, and how often do you see companies have a board of directors and then also have an advisory board that is much more SMEs in certain areas or people with networks that you can really work with and alongside of?
Yeah, as we said at the beginning, the board of directors is a formality that institutional investors will require. So there's really no getting around that. If you want to build a business without having a board, you really have to own the whole thing and not have external shareholders. So board of advisors is, I think, a kind of a quagmire. I think it's often mishandled. They're either eye candy that people want to have on the website, or they're people that, and this is the key, they don't remain updated in the business, so their value really falls off. If you're not updated in the business in a regular way, you're just not going to add value. Every time the advisor is tapped, you have to fully update them on the business. And so advisors rarely add value long term. They may come in and add value for a short period of time, but I've rarely seen advisors adding value long term. Ask yourself this: if you think the advisor is going to be capable of adding value long term, would you make them an observer? And would they invest the time every time there's a board meeting to get fully updated on the business? If those answers, any of those answers are no, they shouldn't be an advisor. Now, the thing with advisors is you can bring them on and you can just drop them off. It's fine. But I recommend that you only bring advisors on if those two things are true. If you think they can add value as a business partner long term, even in sort of a narrow sort of way, like an expertise, and if you will allow them to observe the board meetings. That's not a lot to ask, but how many advisors 3 years down the line will actually dial in regularly to company updates? And you tell me, if I'm not updated on your business 2 or 3 years out, how am I going to add value, really? So I recommend sort of pumping the brakes on that front. Have people that you call on, to get advice and things like that. There's nothing wrong with that. Have mentors, but a formal advisory board is usually, way overrated, in my opinion. There's no harm done, but don't spend too much time constructing that or showing it off, because it usually doesn't amount to much long term. You notice I keep saying long term. Most of my successful exits have taken a decade or more. So long term is really long term.
Yeah. And I think that's interesting. I mean, I was definitely not brought on for eye candy. I was brought on just to try to help out and, get in the weeds and work
Right.
along in the business. And I really enjoyed it. I mean, it was super beneficial for me. And I've told this to the CEO, who I'm now, he's one of my mentors, and I meet with, his VP of marketing and the CRO here and there. And we meet once a quarter and get a lot done. And I keep in tune with the business because I'm usually talking to the CEO as a mentor-mentee relationship. So it's been, probably equally as beneficial for me as it has for them, but totally understand where you're coming from. And full transparency, even on the episode I had him on, he mentioned that. He was like, we just let some of these folks go, and we've only got a few, and, they are all in tune with the business and updated every quarter and working with, the counterpart on our executive team to coach them. And I've certainly enjoyed it, but I so totally see the pitfalls you're mentioning as well happen and play out in real time over the last, 2.5 years, which is a good amount of time to see
Right.
if people are engaged.
Right.
George, this has been amazing. Tons of great insights. I've got 3 or 4 tips I'm implementing
Good.
today, but also over the long term. I think, thinking of a couple to-dos is really important for me to go in and, one, get to know, Stu and Kunal on our board, and 2, figure out who in their network can really help us out, and maybe we can help them out as well. I think that's a great tip. And I love asking their portfolio companies, executives at their portfolio companies that have broken through on some of the challenges I might be having is a home run. And I will be doing that at the end of the meeting today, and advise everyone to take that insight and leverage it, because, the board members might not be the go-to person. They're not boots on the ground, but there's definitely executives that they know that can help you punch through.
That's right. Yeah, it's about an ecosystem. The whole startup thing is really about a community and an ecosystem. It's not about a single group of people trying to change the world. So, and these investors play a crucial role Institutional investors especially play a crucial role and can bridge those gaps and connect those things. And tapping that takes effort, and it goes a little bit against the grain, but it's exactly the thing to do.
Yeah, and it's funny you say that. I mean, I have like I would say monthly meetings with 3 or 4 of our customers that are just at the same, all of our customers are SaaS,
Yeah.
startup either founders or marketers.
Right.
So
Right.
I meet with
Exactly.
a few of them on a monthly basis just to shoot the shit. What's going
Exactly.
on? Where are you struggling? Where did you, and
Exactly.
we're throwing ideas off each other. We're commiserating, but we're really I'm getting a lot out of it by just having that community. I also love that they're customers because I can help,
Sure.
them adopt some features here and there that are beneficial to everybody. But no, it really has been amazing. And I have not done, the legwork to go and look at the portfolio companies and really say, who can we partner with? Who's an expert in a field that I'm struggling with? And that's going to be a game changer and something I'm implementing this afternoon.
Good.
Last question, George. We ask all guests 2 books you recommend every founder read throughout their startup founder journey.
Yeah, this is one I'm going to have some unorthodox answers because I despise how-to books. I don't think how-to books make any sense. Running a startup is full of very unique challenges and impacts from the external world. And so, if I tell you the top 10 things that made me work, made my startup work, it's going to be of limited value. It's like how to raise a successful child. It's just too complicated to boil down to how to. Two books that I would recommend, a little bit off the beaten path. One I liked very much, Annie Duke, which was a writer for the New Yorker. She came up with she's had 2 books that are quite good. The blockbuster was The Biggest Bet, which is a phenomenal book on how she was tutored into becoming a professional poker player from not knowing anything about the game. But the book is about how poker expertise and know-how translates to business and life. And I think there's no better place, and I mean this seriously, there's no better place to learn about reading people, making bets, dealing with unknowns, dealing with risk. There's no better place to experiment and develop your skills than the poker table. That sounds ridiculous, but I believe it to be true. I've put decades of management experience on that. I wish I had learned from the beginning. And so Thinking in Bets is an earlier book she had that wasn't as popular. It's a little drier, but it gets into what startup leadership and startup CEOs are constantly doing, which is they're thinking in bets. They're making bets. They're making decisions based on things that they cannot know. They just cannot know. And this is a bet by definition. So a little bit drier, but so I would recommend reading both of Annie Duke's works on this, which it's just on the same theme. But so that counts as one. The other one is even more surprising. Hustle Harder, Hustle Smart by Curtis 50 Cent Jackson. Because as an entrepreneur, you better hustle, and you better hustle hard, and you better hustle smart. You're competing with other startups. You better be the better hustler out of the two. It doesn't matter how smart you are. Doesn't matter how attractive the advisors are on your website. It doesn't matter how much money you've raised. You better hustle, and you better hustle smarter and harder than the next entrepreneur. Hustle is a bit pejorative, right? But obviously that's not what he means in this book. He's talking about hard work, determination, the ability to get back up, all those good things. But it's great to hear from 50 Cent. Yes, he's got an odd background, but I love the way he put this forward, and especially as an audiobook, because it is narrated by him, which is really, really a special thing. Those would be my two unorthodox book recommendations.
I love that. I'm a gambler, unfortunately, so The Biggest Bet is a great one for me to read.
It's tremendous. A New Yorker writer who never touched a deck of cards in her life, over years, is brought to a point where she wins a professional Texas Hold'em tournament, tutored by one of the top top players, and it's an incredible journey. It's almost hard to believe, but it's a true story, and she takes you through how her thinking evolved, and in areas that are applicable every single day to people in management positions, especially in startups where the unknowns are really kind of overwhelming. So it's brilliant.
That's great, and you're spot on about having the author read the book. I mentioned to you earlier, I'm listening to Kevin Hart's book, which was
Yeah.
recommended by Eric Bond a few episodes ago, and he narrates it, and it's really all about, and Eric mentioned it's all about storytelling, right? Like great marketers are great storytellers. Obviously,
Right.
Kevin Hart's a comedian; he's a great storyteller,
Right.
and it's super interesting, very entertaining, very personal. He's going through his childhood and his father, and
Right.
it gives you so much context as to how these people think through challenges. And to me,
Exactly.
that is where the wins, come from when you're listening to a book like that. So I love the
No question.
recommendations, George.
No question. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much for joining me today, George. Where can everyone connect with you? Either on LinkedIn, or what's the best platform for connecting with George?
LinkedIn is a good one. And then Medium, I sent you the link.
Yes.
Medium GK_. I've written a number of pieces on startups, running startups, raising capital, some of the common pitfalls. Most of my articles are on machine learning and language, but so geeks can look at that as well. So those would be
Nice.
two places.
No, I loved it. We will be linking to all three of the articles you shared with me, and obviously George's profile on both LinkedIn and Medium. So check out the content. George, thank you so much for joining me today. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good luck.